The woman upstairs, the woman stealing headlines, and the premiere night drama that has everybody talking. All right, we need to get into this right now because the timing of what happened has people raising more than a few eyebrows. On the very same night that Remy Ma is celebrating the debut of a brand new Lifetime movie, Claressa Shields suddenly has social media revisiting an older film appearance from years ago. And if you ask some viewers, that timing feels a little too perfect to ignore. Coincidence or strategy? You decide. Because from where many people are sitting, it looks like somebody had their eye on the calendar and knew exactly when the conversation would be at its loudest. If you want a picture of the energy, here it is. Imagine someone keeping close tabs on every major move another public figure makes and finding a way to enter the discussion every single time. Imagine notifications turned on, timelines being refreshed, and every trending moment being watched like a championship game in its final seconds. That's the kind of speculation floating around online right now. That's the mood surrounding this story. And on a night centered around a major movie premiere, attention suddenly shifted toward a film called Lola 2, released back in 2022. According to viewers familiar with the project, Shields appears only briefly in the overall runtime, while much of what audiences see involves footage connected to her boxing career. Let's be honest, many people wouldn't exactly call that a leading role performance. Some critics online have even described it as more of a featured appearance than a true co-star moment. Yet, with Remy Ma premiering her second Lifetime movie, an accomplishment that stands out on its own, conversation somehow found its way back to that older project. And that's why so many people are debating whether this was a simple promotion or something much more calculated. Either way, the internet definitely noticed. This is what people in the media world call earned attention. Earned because nobody handed it over on a silver platter. The work was done, the appearances were booked, and the opportunity was created through effort. She showed up, sat in that chair, and delivered exactly what the moment required. During coverage of the Juneteenth celebrations, the broadcast flowed smoothly from one segment to the next. The transition felt natural, polished, and completely on brand. Then, Spike Lee entered the conversation, and suddenly the atmosphere changed. You could feel the energy shift through the screen. Here was a lifelong New Yorker and dedicated Knicks supporter sharing the spotlight with one of the most recognizable faces associated with Madison Square Garden. The discussion around a potential championship parade instantly became must-watch television, and she was right in the middle of that exchange, right there, fully engaged in the moment. At one point, Spike Lee appeared visibly passionate about the topic and pushed back on a suggestion about expanding the parade route. His reaction immediately grabbed attention. The exchange created one of those authentic television moments viewers remember, the kind of clip that gets replayed, reposted, and revisited for years. While all of this was happening, while she was participating in a major media appearance alongside a legendary filmmaker, while her Lifetime premiere campaign was gaining momentum, another conversation started circulating online. Suddenly, attention was being redirected toward an older independent film appearance from 2022, and that's where many observers began asking questions. Some saw it as a harmless promotion, others viewed it was an attempt to enter a conversation that was already dominating headlines. Either way, the contrast was impossible to ignore. I've watched these discussions unfold for a long time, and what stands out most is how often the same comparisons keep resurfacing. Whenever one major career move becomes a trending topic, online audiences immediately begin connecting it to another person. Whenever a new project, appearance, partnership, or announcement hits the timeline, social media starts drawing parallels. The pattern itself has become part of the story. It's no longer subtle. It's no longer hidden between the lines. At this point, the comparisons practically write themselves. But there is a difference between inspiration and constant comparison. Inspiration encourages someone to create their own lane and build something unique. Constant comparison keeps pulling attention back toward what someone else is doing. That's the distinction many viewers believe they're witnessing. That's why the debate keeps growing. Supporters and critics continue examining everything from public appearances to promotional strategies. And now, on the night of a major movie premiere, that conversation has resurfaced once again. Let's talk about the film at the center of all this, because plenty of people have been bringing it up. The project was released in 2022 and has remained available through streaming platforms. The runtime sits at roughly 90 minutes. Clarissa Shields appears in a supporting capacity for a limited portion of the film. Much of that appearance is connected to boxing-related scenes and athletic sequences. In other words, audiences largely see her in an environment that reflects her real-life career. Some viewers consider that a natural fit. Others argue it differs from carrying a movie as a lead performer. Either way, that's where much of the discussion originates. So when people noticed renewed promotion surrounding that project during the same period as a new Lifetime premiere, speculation immediately followed. Many began debating whether the timing was intentional or simply coincidental. And that's the question continuing to fuel conversation across social media. The optics alone gave audiences plenty to discuss. If you search for the film today, you'll likely see Shields featured prominently in many results. That visibility has led some people to assume she played a larger role than she actually did. Others point out that search engines, marketing strategies, and online engagement often shape public perception. Meanwhile, Remy Ma's project arrived with a traditional television rollout, promotional appearances, trailers, and network support. The difference in scale is difficult to miss. One relied heavily on current media exposure. The other benefited from renewed online attention, and that contrast has become a major talking point in itself. But here's where things become even more interesting, because every platform seems to tell a slightly different version of the story. On X, conversations tend to be direct and confrontational. On Instagram, messages often arrive through captions, stories, and subtle posts open to interpretation. Live streams create another environment entirely, where emotions and reactions unfold in real time. Short-form video apps bring lighter content, trends, challenges, and relationship-focused clips into the mix. Meanwhile, other social platforms offer more personal glimpses into daily routines and behind-the-scenes moments. Every app has its own culture. Every audience reacts differently. Yet despite the different formats, the same names continue finding their way into the conversation. And that's why this story refuses to disappear. And at the center of all these conversations is the one name that keeps coming back into focus: Remy Ma. That's why some people believe the renewed attention on Lola 2 wasn't really about introducing audiences to a film that's already been available for years. The movie has been out since 2022, and its original promotional cycle wrapped up long ago. What many observers noticed was the timing. They noticed it happened during a week when Remy's name was dominating entertainment discussions. They noticed it happened while a major premiere was drawing headlines. They noticed it happened when public attention was already locked onto one story. That's why the debate became so loud. That's why people started asking questions. And the biggest question of all is simple: why? Why does this comparison keep resurfacing? Why does every major moment seem to spark another round of speculation? Why does the conversation continue circling back to the same names? Here's my perspective, and like always, this is commentary and opinion. I think a lot of people underestimated how strong Remy Ma's brand was outside of any single relationship or chapter in her personal life. I think some believed public perception would shift dramatically once certain stories became public. I think some expected her momentum to slow down. But if that's what they anticipated, the outcome appears to have been very different. Because the reality is that Remy Ma built recognition long before the current headlines existed. She had music, television appearances, industry relationships, business ventures, and a loyal audience before any of this became front-page conversation. Her public profile wasn't created by one chapter. It wasn't dependent on one storyline, and that's an important distinction. From the perspective of many supporters, once she started focusing entirely on her own path, new opportunities seemed to arrive one after another. New projects appeared, new appearances followed, new doors opened. Whether that's coincidence, timing, or simply the result of years of work finally paying off is up for debate, but the momentum is hard to ignore. There are several reasons many people think this approach worked. First, she never relied on a single lane to define her career. She expanded into music, television, hosting, acting, live appearances, and multiple business opportunities. Second, she understood something successful entertainers learn early. Diversification matters. You build multiple streams. You create multiple opportunities. You never leave your future dependent on one thing alone. Third, she spent years building audience goodwill through visibility, personality, and consistency. People already knew who she was. People already felt connected to her story. People already wanted to see what she would do next. And finally, many supporters believe she now appears more focused than ever. That's why some argue that attempts to slow her momentum have had the opposite effect. Instead of creating setbacks, they've generated even more attention. Instead of shrinking the spotlight, they've expanded it, and now the conversation feels bigger than ever. But let's keep moving, because the premiere night discussion is only part of the story. The bigger story is the pattern people believe they're seeing, and patterns are what keep audiences paying attention. Once people think they've identified a pattern, every new event gets viewed through that lens. That's what makes this conversation so fascinating. Pattern number one, according to many online observers, is timing. Whenever one headline starts trending, audiences immediately begin looking for responses, reactions, or competing announcements. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it isn't, but people notice it every single time. Pattern number two involves major public milestones. Whether it's a new project, a television appearance, a media interview, or a business announcement, comparisons quickly begin flooding social media. That's become part of the cycle. That's become part of the online discourse, and that's why every new development attracts scrutiny. Pattern number three centers around style and presentation. Viewers often compare fashion choices, interview approaches, social media aesthetics, and public branding strategies. Sometimes those similarities are meaningful. Sometimes they're completely coincidental. But once audiences start making comparisons, every detail gets examined. That's the nature of internet culture. Pattern number four is online monitoring. To be clear, there is no public evidence proving anyone is secretly tracking another person's activity. But celebrity audiences constantly speculate about who watches whom, who follows what, and who keeps tabs on trending conversations. That's nothing new. It happens in almost every high-profile entertainment story. Fans analyze posts. Fans analyze timing. Fans analyze every public move. And once those theories begin circulating, they take on a life of their own. But here's where I want to shift gears, because the human side of this discussion matters too. When it comes to Clarissa Shields, one thing is beyond dispute. Her accomplishments inside the ring are real. Olympic success, championship titles, and a resume that commands respect within the sport speak for themselves. Very few athletes reach that level. Very few competitors build that kind of legacy. The debate has never really been about her achievements as a boxer. Instead, much of the conversation revolves around public image, media presence, and crossover visibility outside the sport. That's where opinions begin to differ. Because while boxing success is undeniable, mainstream entertainment fame operates under a completely different set of rules. Music, film, television, and celebrity culture often create a different level of recognition than athletic achievement alone. Fair or unfair, that's the reality many public figures have to navigate. And that's why these comparisons continue generating so much discussion. And honestly, a huge part of this entire conversation comes down to perception versus reality. The gap between how a public figure sees their own influence and how the broader audience responds can create some very interesting dynamics. Stay with me on this because it matters. If Clarissa Shields were completely focused on her accomplishments as one of the most decorated female boxers of her generation, many people believe these comparisons wouldn't keep resurfacing. There would be less speculation about timing. There would be less discussion about social media posts. There would be fewer questions about why certain moments seem to overlap. That's what keeps fueling the debate. That's why audiences continue talking about it. Because sometimes the reaction itself becomes part of the story. The attention becomes the headline, and the headline becomes the conversation. Some viewers interpret that as a sign of competition. Others interpret it as frustration. Either way, it's clearly generating discussion. And here's the part that's impossible to ignore. While one side of the internet is busy analyzing every post and every repost, Remy Ma appears focused on projects, appearances, and opportunities that continue moving forward. She's attending premieres, she's making media appearances, she's participating in major events, she's building relationships in television and entertainment, she's sitting at tables that matter. And that's why some people find the contrast so striking. While one story is focused on what might be happening online, the other is focused on what is happening in real time. That's a powerful difference. Now, before we get deeper into the commentary, let's take a second to acknowledge the accomplishment itself. The new Lifetime film premiering tonight marks Remy Ma's second project with the network, and that's significant. Networks don't usually bring people back unless the first collaboration delivered results. Somewhere along the way, executives looked at audience engagement, social conversation, and overall performance and decided another project made sense. That's a strong vote of confidence, especially in today's entertainment environment where competition for attention is fierce. And the title alone has people talking, a psychological thriller centered around secrets, trust, and the people who may not be who they appear to be. The timing of that premise has certainly caught viewers' attention. Some people even joke that the storyline feels strangely connected to current headlines. I'm not saying that was intentional. I'm saying the coincidence is hard for audiences to overlook. Sometimes life creates marketing opportunities all by itself. Sometimes the universe writes jokes that nobody in a boardroom could have planned. And sometimes a project arrives at exactly the moment people are already paying attention. That's part of what makes entertainment fascinating. Meanwhile, social media continues doing what social media does best, speculating. People are refreshing timelines, people are checking reactions, people are watching ratings discussions, reviews, and trending topics unfold in real time. Every positive mention becomes a talking point. Every strong review becomes another headline. Every social media post creates another wave of conversation. That's the reality of modern celebrity culture. Once momentum starts building, everyone watches it happen together. And that's exactly what's happening now. But let's circle back to the Lola 2 discussion, because there's another detail worth mentioning. The original recommendation that sparked renewed attention came from a fan group post that wasn't exactly polished. Several names appeared to be misspelled or incorrectly listed. Some details looked rushed. Some information seemed inaccurate. And that's what made the entire situation stand out even more. Because when audiences see errors in a promotional-style post, they naturally start questioning how much thought went into it. They start wondering whether the goal was accuracy or simply visibility. And once those questions begin, the internet does what it always does. It starts investigating. That's when a simple repost becomes a larger conversation. That's when a small moment turns into a trending topic. And that's when the story becomes bigger than the post itself. And here's another detail that caught people's attention. The original fan post being amplified reportedly contained multiple spelling mistakes and factual errors, including the names of well-known figures connected to the project. That's the level of polish audiences were looking at. That's the quality control people were discussing. Yet the post still ended up getting additional visibility, which led many viewers to believe the priority wasn't precision. The priority was getting eyes on it. The priority was making sure something entered the conversation during a very specific moment. The priority was visibility, not perfection. And that's why the timing became such a major talking point. Some viewers saw it as a harmless promotion. Others saw it as an attempt to create a little noise while another story was dominating headlines. Either way, the discussion exploded. Meanwhile, Remy Ma has largely avoided publicly engaging with any of it. No direct responses, no extended back-and-forth exchanges, no obvious attempts to escalate the conversation. And whether you agree with that approach or not, many people view silence as a powerful strategy. Sometimes responding creates a bigger story. Sometimes ignoring a story lets it fade on its own. Sometimes your work speaks louder than any comment ever could. That's a lesson many public figures learn over time. And on a night when her latest project was reaching audiences, the focus naturally remained on the work itself. Now let's briefly talk about Papoose, because his name inevitably becomes part of the discussion whenever these topics come up. His public history with Remy Ma is well documented. His current connection to Clarissa Shields has also generated significant online attention. And because of that, audiences frequently include him whenever they analyze the dynamics surrounding this ongoing narrative. Every interview, podcast appearance, or social media moment ends up being dissected by viewers looking for clues. That's just the reality of modern celebrity culture. Fans examine everything, critics examine everything. Everyone has a theory. And the longer a story remains in the public eye, the more the interpretations people create around it. Some observers view the current situation as a genuine relationship. Others see it as a partnership that attracts headlines because of the people involved. Either way, public perception continues to shape the conversation, and perception, whether fair or unfair, often becomes a story all by itself. Here's what I think is most interesting. A lot of this discussion ultimately comes down to validation, relevance, and public attention. The people who appear most confident in their path usually spend less time comparing themselves to someone else's journey. They focus on building, they focus on creating, they focus on the next opportunity. And that's why audiences often pay close attention to who is producing results versus who is reacting to headlines. In entertainment, momentum matters, consistency matters, growth matters. Remy Ma's supporters point to her expanding list of projects, appearances, and ventures as evidence of that momentum. They point to acting opportunities, they point to hosting opportunities, they point to new business ideas and creative ventures. They point to someone who appears focused on expanding rather than defending. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, that's the perception many fans have. On the other side, critics argue that too much attention has been spent responding to narratives instead of creating new ones. Again, that's opinion, that's interpretation, but it's a perspective that continues showing up across social media discussions. And when audiences keep repeating the same observation, it eventually becomes part of the larger story. What's especially telling to many observers is the timing of that Lola 2 repost. Out of all the days on the calendar, it happened during a period when another project was already commanding attention. That's why people continue bringing it up. That's why the screenshots continue circulating. That's why the conversation refuses to disappear. In many ways, that single social media moment became a symbol for the entire debate. People saw the timing. People saw a contrast. People saw a narrative they felt fit a larger pattern. Whether that interpretation is correct is up to the audience to decide, but the discussion itself has taken on a life of its own. So let's bring this in for a landing. Tonight belongs to a major television premiere. It's a significant milestone, another acting credit, and another step in an already evolving entertainment career. For supporters, it's proof that growth continues. For critics, it's another chapter in an ongoing public conversation. Either way, people are watching, and that's what matters in this business. Attention is currency, relevance is currency, momentum is currency. The people who continue building opportunities tend to stay in the conversation longer than those reacting to it. That's true in music, that's true in television, that's true in virtually every corner of entertainment. And that's why this story remains so fascinating. Now I want to hear from you. Have you noticed the timing people keep talking about? Have you noticed the comparisons that continue surfacing online? Have you noticed how every major headline seems to create another round of discussion? Drop your thoughts below, because this topic has generated some of the most interesting conversations I've seen in a long time. I read the comments, I watch the debates, and sometimes the audience notices details that never make it into the headlines. But before we wrap this up completely, there's one more piece of the story we need to revisit because it deserves its own spotlight: the championship parade conversation. Let me paint the picture one more time. Remy Ma, right in the middle of the celebration, right in the middle of the energy, and right in the middle of a moment people are still talking about. Picture the scene for a second. Remy Ma's then to a major New York moment, wearing a standout look that had social media and fashion watchers paying attention from every angle. Remy waved to her city. Remy appeared in photos that quickly made their way across entertainment outlets and online timelines. She's sharing space with influential figures, longtime supporters of the franchise, and some of the biggest names connected to the celebration itself. That's more than just a photo opportunity. That's a hometown moment. That's the kind of cultural moment you can't manufacture with a repost or recreate with a throwback clip. And while all of that was unfolding, audiences naturally focused on the event happening right in front of them. Cameras followed the parade. Cameras followed the celebration. Cameras followed the people attached to the story everyone was already talking about. That's how major public events work. Attention gravitates toward the biggest moments, and once that momentum starts rolling, it's difficult to redirect it somewhere else. Now, to be fair, Clarissa Shields has achieved accomplishments that deserve recognition. Inside the boxing world, her resume speaks for itself. Championships, accolades, and milestones have earned her a place among the most accomplished athletes of her generation. But outside of boxing, the challenge has always been converting athletic success into broader mainstream visibility. That's not necessarily personal. In many ways, it's structural. Different industries operate under different rules. Music, film, reality television, and mainstream entertainment often reach audiences on a different scale than combat sports. The media attention is different, the sponsorship opportunities are different, the crossover pathways are different. That's simply the reality of the landscape. Because of that, fans and commentators often debate how athletes can expand their reach beyond their primary field. Some choose acting, some choose television, some build brands, some leverage social media. Everyone has a different strategy, but one thing remains true. Controversy alone rarely creates lasting influence. It creates attention, it creates discussion, it creates headlines, but attention and loyalty aren't always the same thing. Audiences may stop and watch a moment unfold, they may screenshot it, they may talk about it online, but long-term support usually comes from consistent work, compelling projects, and a clear sense of direction. That's where careers are built. That's where staying power comes from, and that's why so many people continue comparing different approaches to public visibility. One approach focuses on generating conversation, the other focuses on building a portfolio of work. Right now, supporters of Remy Ma point to a string of recent accomplishments as evidence that her strategy is paying off. A television premiere, high-profile appearances, industry relationships, new creative projects, potential music collaborations. That's the kind of momentum many entertainers spend years trying to create. If you're looking at it from a career standpoint, it's easy to understand why people are paying attention. Now imagine tomorrow morning. One side of the conversation is looking at ratings, reviews, headlines, and audience reactions connected to a brand new project. The other is evaluating what comes next. That's how entertainment works. The cycle never stops. The next move is always coming. The next headline is always around the corner. The next opportunity is always being discussed somewhere behind the scenes. But here's the interesting part. The people who seem to thrive the longest are usually the ones focused on building rather than reacting. They're thinking about the next project, not the last argument. They're creating opportunities instead of chasing conversations. And over time, audiences tend to notice that difference. Before we wrap up, there's another factor worth mentioning. The lifetime audience is a unique audience. They're loyal, they're engaged, They pay attention to performers who consistently deliver. They remember faces, they remember projects, they remember who returns for future collaborations. That's why repeat opportunities matter. When a network brings someone back for another project, many industry observers view that as a sign of trust. It's not just about one movie, it's about a relationship. And relationships often become the foundation of long-term careers in entertainment. That's where future projects come from. That's where bigger opportunities begin. That's where transitions from one industry to another often take shape. So while social media debates continue dominating timelines, there is also a larger career conversation happening in the background. A conversation about growth, a conversation about visibility, a conversation about who is building something sustainable for the future. And that may end up being the most important story of all. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We break down trending stories, analyze the details, connect the dots, and examine the conversations everyone else is already having behind the scenes. So make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and join the discussion, because these stories evolve fast, and trust me, we're not finished yet. There are still plenty of questions surrounding future projects, industry moves, evolving partnerships, and what comes next for everyone involved. There are still angles we haven't explored. There are still developments worth watching. And depending on how the next few weeks unfold, this story could be entering an entirely new chapter. So stay tuned, because something tells me the conversation is far from over. And trust me, there's still a lot we haven't unpacked yet. There's an entire conversation waiting to happen about what becomes of those so-called fan pages when the algorithm eventually stops rewarding content built around the same recycled narratives. That discussion is coming. Every bit of it is already on the schedule. So tonight, tune in and watch the movie. Watch Remy Ma step into her moment on Lifetime and do what she came to do. Turn it into an event. Turn it into a conversation. Turn it into a watch party with your group chat because you already know everybody is going to be talking about it. Then meet me right back here tomorrow because I'm going to have plenty to say, and I already know y'all will too. We're going to break it down, compare notes, and put every receipt on the table. That's the show. That's the message. That's the energy we're ending on tonight. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay sharp, and don't go too far, because something tells me the next chapter is going to be even crazier than this one. I'll see y'all very, very soon.